From the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Wednesday, September 3rd. I'm Abby Larico. When people arrive at the St. Genevieve jail after being arrested by immigration and customs enforcement agents, they can go days in detention without reaching their families.
Can you imagine not knowing where your spouse is for 5 or 6 days? That, to me, is just horrifying. And I think that the detainees, they deserve to get a phone call home.
We'll hear more from volunteers offering comfort and assistance to people awaiting immigration proceedings at the St. Genevieve County Detention Center. That story's coming up after this news on The Gateway. State lawmakers are returning to Jefferson City today for a special session to discuss two issues with major implications for Missourians. On the agenda, redrawing congressional maps and revising how amendments are made to the state constitution. President Donald Trump has called on Republican-led states to redraw their congressional maps to secure more seats for the GOP in the 2026 midterms. Missouri Republicans are considering splitting up the 5th congressional district, which includes Kansas City. Democratic Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, though, says he will fight efforts to carve up his district. Kansas City voters would be divided and lumped in with 3 mostly rural districts to eliminate a safe Democratic House seat. Cleaver says redrawing the map without fresh census data is bound to be unfair.
We're making a decision on the representation of people in our community without the intelligent data that we need to make an intelligent decision.
Cleaver says that's one basis for challenging a new Missouri congressional map in federal court. Lawmakers this session will also consider making it more difficult to amend the state constitution, which could have implications on Missouri's abortion laws. Changes to the initiative petition process would require some constitutional amendments to pass statewide and in all 8 congressional districts in order to be enacted. And in related news, Governor Kehoe has withdrawn his selections for the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners because of the special session. Appointees are required by law to be considered within a certain time frame when lawmakers are gavelled in, but rescinding and later renominating the selections gives more time for confirmation hearings outside of the special session, which is set to begin this afternoon. As Congress returns to Washington after an August recess, a spending fight will be top of mind for many. Illinois Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski says she's hoping for compromise in the next round of spending bills. STLPR's Will Bauer has more from her appearance on Politically Speaking.
The second-term Democrat that represents much of the Metro East says she's hoping the next spending bill will include 15 projects in her district. Those had been axed from budget bills earlier this year. Asked if she would vote against a bill to keep the government funded, Budzinski says she needs to see the legislation first.
The House has been very deeply partisan. And so I think in order to vote for a budget bill, I would have to have, I'd have to have assurances that we've been a part of the negotiations, that this isn't going to further hurt our communities.
Some top Senate Democrats, like retiring Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, drew heat after voting with Republicans earlier this year to prevent a shutdown. Congress will have until October to fund the government. I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
After President Trump's latest executive order aimed at ending cashless bail, the American Civil Liberties Union of Illinois says he's powerless to do that. Ed Yonka is with the ACLU of Illinois and says the state legislated the end to money bond.
That system will proceed. Donald Trump cannot commandeer the operations of the state of Illinois simply because he disagrees with a policy.
The Illinois Supreme Court also upheld the law that ended cash bail. Yonka says it is possible the federal government would try to rescind funding from the state. People living in University City are objecting to a project they say would make flooding worse. St. Louis Public Radio's Kate Grumke reports the area has struggled with sometimes deadly flooding.
A developer wants to build more than 100 townhomes in U City near the River Des Peres. The project would be on what is now a wooded area of the United Hebrew Cemetery. Arthur Wasserman says removing all of those trees will increase floods.
They need to consider the amount of green space that we have to absorb the water that's flowing down into this basin, regardless of whether there's a development or not.
Wasserman lives right next to the proposed development and says his street already floods during heavy rain. He and others spoke against the project at a Stormwater Commission meeting Tuesday. I'm Kate Grumke, St. Louis Public Radio.
An $11 million project to demolish hundreds of problem properties, mostly located in North St. Louis County, is now underway. St. Louis County officials say clearing the properties will bring new development to the area. STLPR's Kayvon Mansouri reports.
A bulldozer tears down a problem property on Count Drive in the Castle Point neighborhood of North County. Its destruction marks the first of some 230 demolitions planned by St. Louis County in neighborhoods throughout the area, most of which are located in the 4th District. District 4 Councilwoman Shalonda Webb says the demolition marks the start of a new chapter for the neighborhood.
We're working together to ensure that this community is not left behind, that it has an opportunity to thrive again.
The county funded the project through defederalized American Rescue Plan funds. County Executive Sam Page says more properties in the Castle Point area, Spanish Lake, and Glasgow Village will come down over the next year. I'm Kayvon Mansouri, St. Louis Public Radio.
A group of activists is offering assistance to ICE detainees during their stay at a St. Genevieve jail. Volunteers with Abide in Love say it's a form of protest and a way to provide comfort to immigrants facing possible deportation. Susan Johnson formed the group in July after learning about volunteers helping detainees in Ulaa. St. Louis Public Radio's Kuziez sat down with her to discuss her efforts.
So many of them are just taken. I mean, I like to use the word abducted because that's what is happening. They are taken from traffic stops, car accidents, job sites, you name it, and their families don't know where they are. The very first person I was asked to help, the wife did not know where her husband was for 5 or 6 days. She actually got in touch with the group in Phelps County, and they found him in the St. Genevieve County Jail. And I'm still corresponding with him and his wife. We've, gotten them legal resources. We've been able to kind of be the go-between as far as communication. I mean, can you imagine not knowing where your spouse is for 5 or 6 days? That, to me, is just horrifying. And I think that the detainees, they deserve to get a phone call home. They deserve to have their loved ones know that they are safe and know where they are.
What kind of support has the group been offering people that are detained by ICE at the St. Genevieve County Detention Center? So what are the concrete ways that you're supporting them?
So we've really found that they're under extreme amount of stress when they have no contact with their family. So supplying them with calling cards has been a really great thing that we could do. It is quite expensive because the fees associated with the communications, the third-party provider of all this communication equipment, they're huge. So we've also used one of our pen pal volunteers who's originally from Mexico. She's an immigrant herself. She has been helping families get themselves set up on these communication apps. So if they're able to afford it, she will call them wherever they are and talk them through the process of getting an account, funding the account, how they find their family member. So that's been really helpful as well. And it's made a huge difference. I mean, we get a lot of thank you notes from our detainees, and they say how much they appreciate getting the calling cards, how they're so very relieved that they were able to call home. And they ask us to help with other things too. If they're very unsure of what legal options they have, we put them in contact with the Rapid Response Coalition, who has volunteer attorneys, and they go through that process.
Have you been receiving support from the community in St. Genevieve or even outside of St. Genevieve?
Quite a bit, yes. It's been really nice to see. Our volunteer list is getting huge. I don't think we're going to fit in our meeting space much longer. But we've got lots of local support, lots of St. Louis support. We're finding, we are nonpartisan, non-religious, but we're finding some of our big supporters are actually members of the Catholic Church, the Immigration Task Force with the Archdiocese. But even in St. Genevieve, I've just been surprised. I've had people, after I wrote a letter to the editor, I had, people dropping checks off at my house. And we've really seen very little negative feedback. All of the feedback that I have noticed has been quite positive. I think people understand what we're doing. Our big message about how these folks aren't being charged with any crimes. They have not. They aren't criminals. They haven't committed these heinous crimes that sometimes the news is telling us that they are doing. They're not gang members. They're just moms and dads and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, and they're just here trying to live their lives, and they are contributing to the community. And by putting them in jail, they're not contributing to the community, and their families are suffering because of it.
That was a Biden Love St. Genevieve's Susan Johnson speaking with St. Louis Public Radio's Ulaa Kuziez. Our Jonathan Ahl edited that piece. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a listener-supported service of the University of Missouri-St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Abby Larico, and from the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this has been The Gateway.